So I'm obviously very familiar with ChowNow, but I think some of the folks might need a quick refresher. Give me your 60-second elevator pitch.
Got it. It's a long elevator ride. So ChowNow is a company that I co-founded in 2011. And what we saw back then is that independent restaurants and small chains needed their own tools to get online. They didn't want to use a marketplace. They had their own customers. They had their own takeout business. They just needed online ordering. They needed mobile apps. They needed help getting essentially their entire front of house onto the web the way they wanted it to be represented and to strengthen the relationship with their customers. So we launched that in 2012. We've added to the platform quite a bit. There's a number of tools, features. We do a lot more today than we did back then, obviously. Today we have just shy of 20,000 restaurants around the U.S. using the platform. Wow. We have 16 million diners ordering from those 20,000 restaurants, and this year we should process about $2.5 billion in orders. And one area that we take a lot of pride in is that $2.5 billion really doesn't have commissions associated with it. I mean, in many ways, we're anti-commission. We are all about strengthening the relationship that the diner that has with their local restaurants. And so in many ways, we've kind of been classified as the kind of anti-Grubhub in many ways, and I think we take pride in that.
Amazing. Congrats on those stats. I'm hearing that for the first time and I'm blown away. I kind of wanted to dive in a little bit to like the average restaurant's shift of delivery sales pre-COVID to now. Pre-COVID, a lot of restaurants were around 30% delivery to the third-party marketplaces. What does that kind of sales mix look now with ChowNow and direct ordering in the mix there compared to the third parties as delivery becomes the majority of restaurant sales?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of shifts over the last 6 or 7 months since COVID really broke out and got bad. And there isn't one answer to that question because what we find is cities are very different. Cold weather cities right now, as the weather starts to turn, are changing quite a bit. As we've seen over the summer, some cities are opening and then they shut again. We had that here in LA where everything shut immediately. Then they opened dine-in and then they shut it again a few weeks later. Then they moved to outdoor dining. So as these things change, and Florida, as you probably saw in the news, recently opened back up for all businesses. So there isn't really one answer to that question. It really, you have to get down into kind of the hyper-local neighborhoods and cities and look at how they're performing. Broadly speaking, though, we've seen restaurants shift to everything takeout as they've had to, and in many ways they've looked to kind of wherever they can to get online ordering and revenue. And so a lot of restaurants realized that they couldn't survive COVID by paying 30 to 40% commissions to the marketplaces. So many of them have shifted to ChowNow and platforms like us that allow for direct ordering, where you don't have to pay a commission, where you own the relationship with the customer, where customers just go to your website or your branded mobile app. And that we've seen a ton of. Our business has grown quite a bit. Our client base has grown a ton over the last 6 or 7 months. But we also know that restaurants are going to the marketplaces. You've seen it in the press. Grubhub and others have also talked about it. And so I think right now restaurants are just trying to figure out how they can get as much revenue through the door to just keep the lights on. Maybe not as many lights as they had before, but as long as they have 1 or 2 lights on, they plan on surviving this and getting through and then returning to normal, hopefully next year or whenever that may be.
Let's hope soon. I want to talk about some of the features of ChowNow that you've introduced during the pandemic to really help bolster restaurants' direct channel sales. Memberships, if you could talk a little bit about how that's grown and things like curbside pickup. I've heard that's kind of exploded for you guys. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it has. So I'll give you some numbers. I'll start with curbside pickup because I think that's where we've seen the most growth. And even though it's got some attention, I don't think it's got the attention that it deserves. Delivery obviously gets a lot of attention, and delivery, everything's grown. Pickup's grown, delivery's grown, but nothing on a percent basis like curbside pickup. And so to give you some numbers on kind of what we've seen here at ChowNow, in February, before COVID kind of hit and really got bad across the country, that month, on the month, we did about $50 million in total food sales on our platform. So 50 million. Of the 50 million, $60,000 was curbside orders. So we had a few hundred restaurants that used a very lightweight curbside feature that we had. It was again, at that point, we probably had 13,000 restaurants on the platform. So a couple hundred of the 13,000 had curbside enabled, and they did collectively 60,000. Fast forward a couple more months, COVID's flaring up across the country. Restaurants are shut down, at least dine-in is shut down. And we have now thousands of restaurants who've turned on the curbside functionality. And that 60,000 in a matter of 2 months went to $18 million. And so on a percentage basis, and it's grown ever since. And so we saw that and we said, okay, well, we underinvested in this product, the curbside feature specifically. And so we rebuilt it from the ground up early on in the summer and relaunched it midsummer. And it is being used by thousands of restaurants, and really millions of diners are now using it to place their order. We're seeing it firsthand. I was watching TV last night. I saw the new Domino's ad campaign that they have going is all about curbside pickup. So it's not alone. It's big restaurants and small restaurants that we work with at ChowNow. So rebuilding curbside is something that we jumped on immediately and we'll continue to invest in. And there's more and more kind of features and iterations you'll see from us on the curbside pickup front. On the membership front, this is something we've actually wanted to do for a while. We've been looking at loyalty. A lot of restaurants have been asking about various loyalty systems. Loyalty, for the most part, a good loyalty system will change diner behavior, right? It'll get a customer to ultimately spend more at that business. And so I've been fascinated with memberships. Amazon Prime is probably the most well-known membership program probably in the world, but there's a number of them. Restoration Hardware has a very successful membership program. For whatever reason, memberships aren't really used with restaurants. At least you're not your average restaurant. So there's things on the edges. So you have your kind of classic country club where you're a member of and you pay your dues. You have the places like Soho House and these kind of private clubs. But you don't really have those local restaurants. And yet, in many ways, you kind of act as a member. You go there often, you order the same pizza from the same pizzeria, you get the same salad from the same salad place. So I've been very interested in launching a membership program. It made sense with COVID because there's one thing that we love seeing here is the desire to help save your local business. And so what we realized, if we launched a membership program where a diner or a customer pays an annual membership fee, 100% of that membership fee could go to the restaurant. And so the gold membership on our platform is $100 to join, and you get an annual discount at that restaurant from there on. But that restaurant receives that $100 immediately. So in terms of cash flow and getting cash to restaurants as quickly as possible, it made a lot of sense. How can we get cash to restaurants as quickly as possible? A lot of people obviously pivoted to gift cards. I'm mixed on gift cards. I think there's a lot of pros, but there's also a lot of cons with gift cards. The membership program, because the other thing it does, it then locks that customer into ordering from that restaurant. So not only do they pay that upfront membership fee, again, in the case of the gold membership, $100, but given the discount, that member now has to spend $400 at that restaurant annually just to recoup that initial $100. So unless they spend more than they typically do at the restaurant's actually not out anything in the way of the discount. So it really works well for restaurants. We have about 1,000 of our restaurants who have enacted and enabled membership program. We're seeing a lot of usage there. And it's doing that thing we want it to do, which is it's getting that diner to spend more. So what we're seeing in the month before a customer becomes a member and then the month after, the difference there is that diner spends about 40% more at that restaurant. So it's doing exactly what you want out of a membership program. So we're very excited and kind of the early signs that we're seeing from our membership program.
Congrats on all that. That's awesome stuff. One of the silver linings of the pandemic, I think, is the awareness around some of the practices of the various marketplaces. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on the regulations that have been passed around delivery caps and whether that's a good solution to the problem. Personally, well, I'm not going to say what I personally think. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I think the intent and the spirit behind them is obviously good. It's cities around the country want to help support their local restaurants. They realize that they don't have the upper hand when it comes to the delivery platforms. So I like the intent. I don't think the way they've been rolled out is all that successful. I think from a few standpoints, I do take issue with capping what companies can charge in many cases when they're not a monopoly. And a lot of these companies, frankly, aren't a monopoly. There's choices. Restaurants don't have to use the delivery apps. We're seeing a number of restaurants join the delivery apps, but also to unplug from them. So I take a little bit of issue on the practice of capping what someone can charge. I don't love that. The other thing is they were very poorly written, as I've kind of read through a number of them here in LA and others, Chicago and New York. So they were pulled together really quickly. They weren't written all that well. They're kind of very broad in what they describe. It's clearly written by people that just don't know the space all that well, which has consequences that come with it. And then the big companies, the delivery apps, frankly, aren't really going by them anyway. I mean, a lot of them are just kind of ignoring it and they're not being enforced. So they're a little bit pointless. There are a couple things I do like, so it's not all bad. So one, I like the fact that it's bringing awareness to the problem of and the business practices of Grubhub and others. So it's making citizens of cities realize actually that these orders that they're placed on these platforms, that not the majority, but a big chunk of the money that they're spending in the local restaurants aren't going to local restaurants. So they're being sucked out and sent off to these very large kind of multi-billion-dollar tech companies. So the awareness is a very good thing. The other thing that I've seen, and Denver recently passed this, and this is where actually I'm fully on board, is outline the practice of non-partner restaurants. And so if you as a restaurant owner elect to join a membership, a delivery app, and you agree to the fees, that's fine. That's two private businesses agreeing to do business with each other. If you as a restaurant do not want to join join a delivery app, and they just scrape your information, they take your menu prices, they throw it on, they take your brand, your IP, and they put it on. And we're seeing Grubhub doing this in mass, and so same with others. They're not alone, but Grubhub came out early in the year, and they at one point before COVID hit, they actually had more non-partner restaurants on their platform than they actually had partner restaurants. And so, as a basic diner, I'm going onto the app, I don't know better, and I'm actually that restaurant's misrepresented, and there's a number of issues there. And so that practice I think is frankly awful. And I like the fact that California's just outlawed it. That goes into effect in a few months. Denver just outlawed it, and those are regulations that actually are very good. When the restaurant doesn't want to do business with the delivery app and the delivery app says, I don't care, I'm just going to take your information and put it on. That's where those companies should be regulated, in my view.
Totally. Just for the audience, we just been throwing up some polls based on the conversation up in the polls tab. So feel free to answer those questions, and if we have time, we'll reveal the results. You can actually see the results in real time. Chris, on that note of the marketplaces and awareness around the marketplaces, curious to get your thoughts on all the consolidation that's going on in the space, Grub and Postmates getting acquired, and DoorDash going public likely by the end of the year.
Yep. So it feels like the chessboard is now set for a while. In a while, I mean a couple of years. Obviously, it was very well reported that Uber is trying to buy Grubhub. That fell apart the last week or so. And so now you have these three large companies. Uber doesn't appear to be going anywhere with Uber Eats. They're obviously buying Postmates at this point. So you have that group kind of forming, and even though the deal's not officially done yet, it likely will be wrapped up at some point. DoorDash going public. They're well capitalized. They're very well run. They're not going to go anywhere anytime soon either. And then you have Grubhub, which is now owned or will be owned by this large European company. So you basically have these three large companies. I don't think we'll see any further consolidation there. There are a few smaller players out there. Where I think there may be some consolidation is the other side of the market. Those are everyone that's kind of pivoted into online ordering in the last couple of months. And what we're seeing there is, and what it reminds me a lot of, is it reminds me of a lot of the kind of daily deals in the early days. So Groupon and Living Social in kind of 2008, 2009, where there are all these copycats, and we at ChowNow have plenty of copycats ourselves at this point. They come out of the woodwork and they say, oh, we can do that as well. And they just never quite get traction. And so we're seeing a lot of copycats of both the marketplace model and ChowNow's direct model. And I just think because there's so many of them, none of them will get all that much traction. There's just too many of them, and that works against them. And so I think there'll be consolidation there next year. I think some may go away, some will be acquired. We may look to make some acquisitions ourselves next year. So I think you'll see it actually on that side of the market, where the focus has actually been on the much larger companies out there, the DoorDashes and such. And that's probably going to be a healthy thing. But that's how I see it playing out. I think kind of Uber and Lyft is also kind of another analogy there, where there are a ton of copycat ride-sharing companies in the early days. There are some in Austin, Texas that I used when I was in Austin many years ago, and every city kind of had their version of Uber. None of them got all the traffic. They kind of went away, and you're left with Uber and Lyft. And I think that's kind of what you'll see here with a few more players outside of just two.
Absolutely cool. You guys also work with DoorDash as a partner for the back end kind of last mile fulfillment piece.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about what you saw restaurants, kind of how they were fulfilling delivery on their own using either DoorDash Drive or their own employees?
Yeah. DoorDash there's a reason DoorDash has grown to number one. They're very well run. They probably are the best executors. They're probably the brightest operators in the space, in my opinion, from kind of what I've witnessed. And that may have, Uber Eats, the original Uber Eats team obviously did a very good job there, but a lot of them have kind of moved on these days. DoorDash is still very much that kind of original team that they understand and they operate really well. And they're very good at the operation side of the business. And so they have a platform called DoorDash Drive. And again, I don't love all their marketplace practices, but that's kind of probably another question. On the DoorDash Drive side of things, they operate that really well. They also, the way they price is the way I think all delivery should be priced, which is on a per mile basis, right? The task at hand. I've always thought it was bizarre that if someone walks into a restaurant and picks up an $80 bag of food versus a $40 bag of food, that restaurant has to pay more for those exact same bags to make the exact same trip, whether it was 1 mile, 1.5 miles, 2 miles. The task that driver, that the courier doing is the exact same, right? They're picking up a bag of food. Who cares how much money is that bag is worth, right? $30, $40, $80. It doesn't. It's kind of irrelevant at that point. It's the job of picking up the bag in the restaurant, getting in your car, and then driving or getting on your bike, depending on the city you're in, and driving to the destination, either the customer's home or their office, and dropping it off. And that's the way we price our delivery integration, which is basically off that. It's a flat pickup fee, and which includes the first mile, and then every additional mile. The other thing that we love about it is it gives full control to the restaurant. So they can determine, okay, I know what the pricing is. It's set. It's very easy to build my business and my operations around this pricing. And I, as a restaurant owner, can then say how much of that delivery fee I want to pass off to the customer. So we have some restaurants who will pass everything off. They'll say, if the diner wants to have delivery for my restaurant, great. They can pay that $6, $7, $8 delivery fee and they'll get it. Some restaurants will say, well, I'll split it. So I'll cover $3 or $4 and the diner will cover $3 or $4 as well. And then we have some restaurants that say, as long as they spend X on per order, so 30, 40, $50, I'll cover the entire delivery fee, but I'll set a radius on how far that food can travel. One, that way I know what the max fee will ultimately be. And also my food doesn't travel that well, so I only want it going a half mile, a mile, 2 miles. And so everything we're about is giving restaurants control. And so our partnership with DoorDash helps us achieve everything I just described. And they're very good partners on that front and the way it's priced and the control and everything else. So we're pleased with that partnership and it just continues to be successful.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a very necessary component of the whole equation. So obviously Hungry is very focused on ghost kitchens and virtual brands as of late. You know, I know a lot of them also use ChowNow's. So I'm just curious to kind of get your take on what we're going to see going forward. Are we going to see ghost kitchens take off as pure play ghost kitchens, or is it more virtual brands out of existing spaces? This is kind of the big question I've been asking a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the jury's still out is the kind of where we are right now. I've seen it work very well, and I've seen it fall flat, and I've seen restaurants that are very successful on their own, kind of classic traditional restaurants in various neighborhoods in LA, New York, and other places, try to go into a cloud kitchen facility. They last 4 months, they don't see the volume, and they pull out. I think it's been widely reported that big brands have also seen some success and some haven't. So Chick-fil-A is always the brand that I see as kind of the poster child of where it works really well, partly because their brand is massive. They have a very loyal following, and the price point of their food makes a lot of sense. You can mark it up and still it's pretty affordable. I've seen others where someone like Sweetgreen, it hasn't worked nearly as well. In many cases, they pulled out of some, but not all of their cloud kitchen facilities as well. So I think the jury's still out. I've talked to enough restaurants where it hasn't worked, where we know it's just not going to be a home run for everyone. We have, again, a lot of clients here in LA that have tried it, and then a year later, they've just canceled their contract, their lease, and they've pulled out, and they're back to running their restaurant. So I don't have the answer long term, but I think it'll work well in some cases and not in others. In terms of the virtual within the restaurant's own facilities, and we're seeing that pop up. There's a number of companies do it. We're currently partnered with a company called US Foods, which is the second largest food distribution company in the country. So Cisco Foods is number one, US Foods is number two, right behind them. Massive. They work with 100,000 plus restaurants and provide groceries, to-go packaging. Everything a restaurant needs to operate usually comes off a US Foods truck in the morning. And so they, a couple of weeks ago, we partnered with them on a virtual kitchen. So they created a number of brands. So I think they have 5 or 6 brands to start. So kind of the classic grilled cheese and wings and everything that seems to be working pretty well. And the advantage that they have is they provide the restaurant with everything. They have all the groceries, they have the menu, they have the recipes, everything to provide the restaurant. And so their goal is to have a couple thousand restaurants using these virtual kitchens propped up inside their existing facilities. I think it's still mixed. It's still early days. We'll see. Clearly, if it works for everyone, you can't triple the amount of restaurants in the city and expect the amount of orders in the city. Right. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, it's going to get spread across more. So, so I'm not sure it's going to pull more dollars out of people's wallets. I think it's just going to be spread across more. So if it's successful, I think there's only a limit on how successful it can be, in my view.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I want to head back to the polls real quick and just share some of the stats. I would say the majority of our audience today thinks that delivery fee caps are a good thing. And I would say that the majority of our audience has ordered food delivery in at least somewhere in the range of 1 to 5 times in the last 30 days. And last but not least, restaurants, a few restaurants have talked about their takeout delivery revenue growth. I would say the majority of people are saying it's grown over 100%. Not surprising, but cool, awesome. Any final closing notes? I would love to share any instructions for people to get started with ChowNow if they're in the market for an online ordering platform, or how can people get started, and any final thoughts on anything we chat?
Yeah. The easiest way to get in touch is just through our website. So if you go to chownow.com, you'll see a big bright button at the top to get in touch with us, submit your information. We would love to talk to you, see if it's a good fit. Again, I guess kind of the closing pitch to end it with is, and we really provide restaurants with all the tools that they need to operate, so they're less reliant on any of the marketplaces out there. And that's our goal. That's our number one goal is to help restaurants avoid commissions, have a better relationship with their restaurants, and build them branded mobile apps and a number of other tools to help them get there. So that's what we do. And if you need another restaurant, we'd love to work with you.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your candor today and for taking the time to chat with us at Curbivore. So a lot of great insights to take away from today. And I hope we have an archive available so whoever didn't tune in can still watch. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Matt.